Twice a year, I'll do a really thorough audit of everything that I have in my wardrobe. And this typically tends to happen at the start of a new year, signaling that fresh start, that new intention that I have and I'm trying to set for the year ahead. And the second time is usually around the transitional season, when we're starting to see that shift in what we're wearing and that halfway point in the year has passed. It's just enough time to give anything we were on the fence about a second chance. And I thought today I could chat through all the things that I am decluttering from my wardrobe. And when I tell you, I spent my weekend just trying on every single thing. And I do have a little tip to share with you when you are decluttering before I share what it is that I'm actually kind of letting go of. And that is to try things on category by category and also pair like with like, whether it is the color palette or the actual style of the item. Because when we're thinking about the role an item plays in our wardrobes and we're trying to narrow things down, getting a sense of similarities and where there's cross functionality within two pieces, that can be a great way to go, well, actually, I think I like this one better, so I don't really need the other one. That said, you don't have to let go just for the sake of minimizing. All right, so we're gonna dive right into it with one that I feel like might be a bit controversial, because when I shared on Instagram that it was something I regretted buying, a lot of people said, no, you need to keep it. And the very first thing is colors that I never wear. And I think seasonal color analysis in particular can be a bit of a divisive topic. I think there is so much merit in getting an analysis done. However, I don't think it's the be all end all. I think it can tell you so much about why certain colors might suit you while others don't. But also it gives you context and a framework around how to wear colors in your wardrobe and how to pair things that will be more harmonious with your coloring and your essence. And I suppose the other thing that comes into play here is how you want your clothing to speak for you, because bold colors tend to be quite loud, whereas those more muted, desaturated shades are calmer, quieter, and more chill. And oftentimes we're using our clothing to reflect that. The trickiest thing for me is undertone, especially when I'm shopping online, because I do have a green tinge to my skin with an olive complexion. And so some colors I would think they would look good, but then in person, they make me look so sallow. And one particular color I really struggle with is certain shades of this kind of like grayed, desaturated, very pale, icy blue-green. And I have this set from Tibby, which I bought during the sale, which meant it was final sale, and that's definitely something I need to stop buying, final sale items, and I love it in theory. However, when I put it on, I do feel like there are other colors that suit me better or that I'm more inclined or want to wear over this. And I think also the actual pieces themselves, I like them best worn together as a set as opposed to separately, and that feels really limiting to me. I really want items that are doing, you know, double, triple, quadruple, pentuple duty in my wardrobe. I haven't really had the time to allocate towards some wardrobe playtime to see how I can make this work. But number one for me, absolutely colors that I never wear and never reach for. And this is a really good learning, because you can go, okay, in future, I know not to buy that because it's just gonna end up being pushed to the back of my wardrobe. The next item I always tend to declutter are multiples. And I have a bit of a habit of getting this tunnel vision. I get really excited about certain silhouettes or just certain items in general. I mean, stripes in particular has been problematic for me over the years. It's one of my style kryptonites, I would say. So I tend to accumulate an abundance despite actually not wearing them that frequently. So it's something I know I need to curtail and that I really need to dial down. But also right now, I've noticed that I'm really craving a barrel leg jean. And so almost every pair of jeans I'm trying on has that barrel leg shape. I already have some phenomenal barrel leg jeans and I don't really need any more. So for me, it was a question of trying on all the pairs that were very similar and parting ways with the ones that I did like, but I'd never choose first. Next thing I'm decluttering are items that don't match my lifestyle. And these particular shoes here are kind of a double whammy, because in addition to being something that doesn't really suit my lifestyle, the actual materials used don't really feel fit for function. To me here, they are more for aesthetic purposes, and in reality, I know that I crave pragmatism in my clothing. And the reason why I never wear these shoes is they just kind of feel a little bit too dressy, a little bit too fussy. And while I love to bring that fashion element into my outfits, realistically, I mean, it's 27 degrees today here in Sydney. I'm not wearing a shearling sandal because my feet will be melting in these and it just will not be comfortable. And to kind of just double down on this items that don't suit my lifestyle, knowing that I shouldn't be buying really pretty going out tops because I hardly ever go out. I stay at home a lot, I'm a homebody. And the opportunity for me to wear those things, very rare. If you're someone who lives a very casual lifestyle, really sharp tailored items are probably not going to be at the forefront of your wardrobe unless you're dialing them back with more casual pieces. And I kind of want to go on to my next point about items that aren't really fit for their purpose. So another really good example of an item like this would be a piece that is designed to be worn as a wardrobe staple, but the fabrication that they've used is really quite delicate and precious, and so you need to be careful with it. It won't withstand or live up to the type of daily wear and tear that you need from an item like that. So yes, sadly I will be parting ways with these. I am actually listing a few things over on Vestiaire Collective, so I will leave a link to my listings below in case you would like to go and check that out. The most obvious one to declutter from your wardrobe has to be items that don't fit and items that are beyond repair. And these are so obvious. When you're doing that try on, you'll know immediately. Those items that don't fit, I don't think you need to part ways with them straight away, especially if your body is fluctuating in size. I would tuck them away if you have the space to do so, in a box underneath the bed, at the top of the wardrobe, so you can come back to them later. Because if your body does shift back, you'll be kicking yourself for letting those items go, as now you have to go out and spend more money to replace the things that you had that were perfectly functional. And this is actually a good time to assess what you might like to get altered, put it all into a pile, and then make a point of visiting the tailor that week so that these items don't end up at the back of your wardrobe unworn for another 6 months or so. I've actually stacked up some trousers I want to get taken up, as well as a skirt I would like to try and get pinched in at the waist. Okay, the next thing that I'm decluttering are those imaginary heirlooms. These are typically designer items that we buy and we say to ourselves, oh, I'll pass that down to my daughter or my son one day. And I have to say, I don't think that that's a justification for hanging on to an item, because my daughter, while she might end up loving some of the bags that I own, the chances are that she also will have her own taste and her own style that is very different to my own. And I can't predict what the future will hold, and I don't want to be hanging on to something for 20 years in the hopes that she will love it when she's older. So a really good example of this is my Chanel boy bag, and this is going to be such an unpopular opinion, but I did decide to resell this because I hadn't worn it in 5 years. It was a bag I never thought about, and I thought if I'm ever going to pass down a Chanel bag to my daughter, I have a vintage classic Chanel flap that I can give her instead. And that's a bag I genuinely love and do happen to use on occasion. I reminded myself that my wardrobe isn't a museum, and yes, I have some pieces that I consider museum pieces that I'm hanging on to, but I don't feel like they take up that same amount of space, and I do think about those from time to time, whereas the Chanel boy I never thought about, and actually it felt very freeing to let it go. Next thing I decluttered from my wardrobe are the items that are almost but not quite. And this for you might be where you've bought a dupe instead of the actual thing, but it could also just be an alternative that doesn't hit the mark for whatever reason. Maybe the fabrication is wrong, or maybe it's something to do with the silhouette, and I have a good example of this from my wardrobe. Yes, it's another pair of shoes. These are from Chaussure Lapin, and they are such impeccable quality. The leather is so supple and soft. The heel is really nice and walkable, and I love the color of them. But the thing that doesn't quite hit the mark for me is actually the shape. It's really rounded at the toe, which I feel is enhanced by the fact that it has that toe cap detail, and it also has the contrasting outsole as well. The detail I do love about this is that the sole sticks out a little bit further from the actual boot itself, which means the toe is going to be reasonably protected. However, something I know about myself is that the reason why I'm not reaching for these is the toe shape. If these had more of a pointed toe or an almond-shaped toe, I'd be more inclined to wear them, whereas right now in the color combo and the styling, they feel quite 60s, which isn't reflective of my style. And the reason why it's been so hard for me to let these go is because they are such a beautiful boot that I feel like it would be criminal not to hang on to them, but I think it's more of a waste to keep them in my wardrobe where I'm not really reaching for them at all. I'm decluttering the items that aren't practical. For example, I have this tote from Bob Orr, which is beautiful. The leather quality is really nice, and I love the style of it. But it just doesn't really work in reality because it's very open at the top, just has a snap closure, and because it is so long and wide, I find that things just feel like they're going to fall out of it because it doesn't have a lot of height to the bag to keep things tucked in. You would have to insert maybe a little dust bag or something like that to help counteract that. I never think to reach for it because of that reason, and so anything else that has that same story attached to it where I just am finding that it feels impractical, that it is making life harder, I'm not going to wear it. I don't need it in my wardrobe. It's time to say goodbye. The next thing we're letting go of are the guilt keepers. These are the ones that were expensive and you balked at the price that you paid. And because they were pricey, you feel the sense of guilt attached if you let it go, if you say goodbye. If we take it back to economics, it's a sunk cost. So you've already spent the money, whether you own it or you don't. And I think that on selling it to someone who will use it is both a better use of the item and your space in your wardrobe, but also your resources, because you'll end up being able to recoup some of the money that you paid, maybe not all, but you could put that towards something new that you will end up wearing and cherishing. And yeah, I have fallen into this trap, but definitely a lot in the past. I'll hang on to something because maybe it's the brand or because I spent so much on it, but I know that just hanging on to it does not change anything. If I wasn't wearing it before, I'm unlikely to be wearing it now unless I figure out how to style it. And maybe that's where some wardrobe playtime comes into the equation to help you really maximize that piece so that it does end up becoming something you really love to wear. I'm decluttering items that are uncomfortable, so this is clothing that doesn't feel effortless to wear, that kind of feels like it takes work, like I can't move around, it's itchy or scratchy or too tight, and also shoes that just really squeeze my feet. And as someone who has wide feet and a bunion, this is something I take very seriously, as I just have zero interest in getting blisters when I'm wearing shoes. My shoes should carry me from A to B. I shouldn't have to carry them because my feet are hurting so much that I no longer want to be wearing them. And I actually want to highlight an example of an item I was going to part ways with because of how uncomfortable it was, and I was able to alter it to make it work. I'm actually currently wearing a variation of it. It's this little vest from Ray, which has these sort of frayed, chopped off sleeves. I have a more tailored white version, and I don't know what they put into the actual shoulder pad, but it would cut into my arm every time I wore it. And while I was excited about that item, I could never bring myself to actually put it on my body because I didn't really want my arms feeling all cut up all day. That's not a pleasant feeling. I ended up taking it to the tailor, getting that removed. Now it's something that I actually can reach for, and I'm so much happier. Whereas before I was quite ready to just let it go. So I think there are some instances where you can rework a piece, but I'd say that it's more of a special case. Something I talk about often is how a classic item may not actually be your version of classic, and that is definitely something that I'm always thinking about decluttering from my own wardrobe, going, is that the version of this type of item that I actually want to have in my wardrobe? For example, a classic that most people have in their wardrobes, and myself included, is a denim jacket. But I find that actually I don't like the traditional version of a denim jacket, whether it is that kind of cropped style or the more oversized trucker silhouette. I prefer a denim jacket that is in a chore style kind of silhouette, or that reads more as a shirt. And I know this about myself, and so when I am out shopping for that kind of item to add into my wardrobe, I'm trying to make sure it meets those parameters. And the very last thing that I'm decluttering from my wardrobe are former favorites that no longer spark joy. I like to think of our closets as a work in progress, because we are a work in progress, as is our style. It evolves every month, every season, every year, and even just with those phases of life, or maybe with a change in location. And it's okay to be fickle, to say you'll love something forever, only to turn around 12 months later and realize that actually your style has started to move on. I think the key here is understanding when an item has stopped serving you and your wardrobe and feels more like a bit of dead weight hanging in your wardrobe, rather than a compliment to your current style. And I do want to point out that there is a scale to this, because I think that changes in trends and silhouettes that we're seeing are intrinsically linked to what we consider our style to be, but I would reflect more so on the actual styling potential and capabilities of that piece, whether you could see yourself wearing it and incorporating it with how you like to dress now, or if you've just singularly moved on entirely and now that's something you would never consider wearing, not now, not in a decade's time. But I think that can be really tricky to reflect on, especially when we're trying to be hypercritical of what we are hanging in our wardrobes, and sometimes just taking that space to tuck something away if you can, if you have that luxury, because I feel like time is really the only thing that will truly tell. Anyway, those are the things that I will always end up decluttering from my wardrobe. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that it gave you some food for thought. Maybe it was a companion as you did a little declutter or wardrobe audit of your own. As I mentioned at the start, my #1 tip still stands: try everything on. And if you have the time, try it on with different items in your wardrobe to see the potential, see what you can unlock from a styling perspective. If you are new here and you would like to see more videos like this, style tips, brand reviews, how to make the most out of your wardrobe, then I would love for you to subscribe, like if you did enjoy the video, and I will see you next time with a new one. Thank you so much for spending some of your day with me. I'll see you next time. Bye.